You know how sometimes you hear about a great idea from another country and think, hey, we should totally do that here. It seems so simple, right? A good solution should work anywhere. But what we're going to see today is that when it comes to the law, lifting an idea from one place and dropping it in another isn't just tricky, it can be downright dangerous.
So that brings us to the big question for this whole explainer. Should a law that works in one country just be copied and pasted into another? I mean, it's a really tempting idea, especially if it seems to solve a problem you're having. But it's a temptation we need to be very, very careful with.
And here is a perfect example of what I mean. You might hear someone say, hey, look at Germany. They have a specific law to go after judges who deliberately twist the law. If it works for them, why on earth shouldn't we have it too? And on the surface, that sounds completely reasonable. It sounds like a simple, logical way to keep the justice system honest.
But what seems like a simple question is actually the gateway to a massive, really important debate in law. It opens up this whole can of worms about something called legal transplants. And believe me, when a legal transplant goes wrong, the consequences can be, well, pretty severe.
Okay, so here is the single most important point. A law is not a piece of software. You can't just copy the code and install it on a new computer and expect it to run the same way. The way it functions, the effects it has, and even the harm it can do, it all completely depends on the legal and cultural operating system it's running on. So what does that operating system look like? Well, to really understand a law, especially a criminal law, you have to look at the whole ecosystem. What's the constitutional setup? How are judges chosen in the first place? How much power do prosecutors have? And maybe the biggest one of all, what is that country's unique, specific history? All these things completely change how a law actually behaves in the real world. All right, so to really understand Germany's law against judicial distortion, we can't just read the words on the page. No, we have to go back. We have to look at the specific and frankly often very painful history that forged this law into what it is today. You see, this law didn't just pop into existence. It has deep roots, going all the way back to 19th century Prussia. But its modern form was really forged in fire. It became an absolutely critical tool for Germany to deal with the role judges played during the Nazi era. And then it was used again, after the Berlin Wall fell, to reckon with the actions of judges from communist East Germany. Every stage of its life was a direct response to a massive national trauma. So when you look at it that way, you realize this German law isn't some general tool for everyday judicial oversight. It's much more like a scar, a permanent mark left behind by a very specific and painful history. It's a product of what experts call transitional justice, the process of trying to heal after a period of widespread injustice.
Okay, so hearing all that intense history, you might think this law is used all the time in Germany, right? Like a constant check on their judges. But the reality is actually the complete opposite.
The easy assumption is that this law is just a hammer to control judges. But Germany's own top court, the Federal Constitutional Court, sees it in a totally different light. For them, it is a highly, highly exceptional rule. It's not a weapon, it's a safeguard, meant to reinforce the idea that even independent judges are still bound by the law.
And in the real world, they're incredibly cautious with it. The courts interpret it so narrowly. Even during that critical time after reunification when they were dealing with former East German judges, the exact kind of situation the law was designed for, they applied it with extreme care. The result? Almost no one was actually convicted under it. This is a tool that is kept in the box unless absolutely necessary.
In all of this, it brings us right to the big lesson here. Looking at how this German law actually works reveals what is probably the single most dangerous mistake you can make when comparing legal systems. Falling in love with the result without understanding what it took to get there.
This quote just nails it perfectly. It's the danger of taking the conclusion, the final text of the law, but leaving behind all the conditions. You leave behind the history, the legal culture, the constitutional safeguards, all the invisible architecture that actually makes that law work the way it does. So, you end up with a recipe for disaster. Step 1, you find a law in another country. Step 2, you admire what it seems to do. And then, the critical mistake, steps 3 and 4. You totally ignore why it exists and how it's actually used. And you just copy-paste the final rule into your own, completely different system.
So at the end of the day, here's the takeaway. When we look at another country's laws, asking, do they have this law, is the wrong question. It's too simple. The real crucial questions are, why was this law created in the first place? And what are all the invisible guardrails that control how it really truly works? And that leaves us with one final thought. And this goes way beyond just the law. It could be about a business practice, a school policy, anything. The next time you hear about a great idea from somewhere else, just pause and ask yourself this one critical question. When we borrow the idea, what vital context are we leaving behind?